After going over the list that Mr. Ryan provided, I decided to go with a title that really captivated me in the sense that I was curious about what it would be about. So I decided to go with Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. This short novel takes us all the way to London, more precisely the Thames River, where Charlie Marlowe is talking with a bunch of men about his experiences in Africa. There are two main settings in this short novel: the Thames River and the Congo River in Africa. The Thames River and the Nelly. At the start of the story, we see Marlowe aboard a small boat sailing down the Thames River in England with a group of men. It is the end of the day and they are relaxing on the deck of the Nelly. Marlowe describes the setting as bright and brilliant. It is a place of light and beauty. As the sun sets, the setting changes, and Marlowe describes the approach of darkness using words like somber, brooding, and dull. Night is coming and the world is getting darker. The greatest city in the world, as he says, is losing its brilliant beauty to the darkness. The sight steers Marlowe to comment that this place was once dark all the time. As Marlowe tells his story, he describes Africa as a dark place too, even though it is day. Marlowe uses harsh words like scar, mournful, and gloomy to help us visualize the setting. He describes the land as grim, monotonous, and even evil. As Marlowe's journey progresses, he ends up deep in Africa by traveling along the Congo River. He comments that it is similar to traveling back to the beginning of time. He notes the lack of brilliant sunshine and once again, using the word gloom, describes shadows that cover the land. Much like when Marlowe first came to Africa. We're experiencing a setting that is starkly different than England, a place full of darkness. Before getting into the plot, we have to know the characters. The novel revolves around two main characters, Marlowe and Kurtz. The novel is mostly made up of Marlowe's journey into the Belgian-occupied Congo. Marlowe is a curious, compassionate, and a middle-class seaman who admires efficiency and joins the company in search of an adventure. Before joining the company, Marlowe's thoughts on imperialism were quite vague. The experiences that Marlowe has during his journey create a moral dilemma between Marlowe and his internal mind. On the other hand, Mr. Kurtz is a charismatic and ambitious person. He is the embodiment of imperialism. He is the most efficient ivory collector in all Africa, which attracted Marlowe to him. The Heart of Darkness opens aboard a ship in the Thames River, where Marlowe is telling the story of his journey that makes up the novel. Marlowe has always been fascinated by maps, and also by places like Africa that wild reigned. The novel centers on Marlowe, an introspective sailor, and his journey up the Congo River to meet Kurtz, the most efficient ivory collector among with great abilities. Marlowe quickly sees the darkness in Africa. Everything was different. Everything was just so uncivilized. Marlowe takes a job as a railroad captain with the company. As he travels up the Congo, Marlowe witnesses the brutality inside the company's stations. The natives are forced into the company's service, and they suffer terribly from overwork and mistreatment. This is imperialism, Marlowe. Marlowe finally leaves the central station and navigates the Congo River in search of Kurtz. Not long after, Marlowe and his companions arrived at Kurtz's inner station. The rest is history. There is actually a connection that I found between The Brave New World, the book we read in class, and Heart of Darkness. It's basically something that's very visible or very noticeable, and it's how the people or upper class men react to uneducated, uncivilized natives, and it's like they're just outcasts and they're basically animals, or just like they say in the book Heart of Darkness, they describe them as insects, not even humans. Fortunately, I can make connections between my society in Paraguay and Heart of Darkness. When the natives are treated as inferior and as outcasts, we can see this too in how people treat the Guarani or indigenous people here, and they're treated as inferior and as outcasts. They are not given their recognition, even though they have their own language and culture and everything. And it just pisses me off that people make fun of them and don't respect their past. Like, Paraguayans have blood, Guarani blood, and it's funny, and since they're making fun of themselves. The Heart of Darkness also makes me think about a very hot topic right now, which is the environment and climate change, since the main character, Marlowe, talks about the forest and the jungle, how the vegetation covers mostly everything, and how it's barely touched by human, and it's very difficult to find places like that right now since of deforestation and many things that humans have been doing to the environment. So it goes back in time where the wild ruled the earth. A short passage that really caught my attention is related to one of my connections about the environment and climate change, and it says like this: going up that river was like traveling back to the earliest beginnings of the world, when vegetation rioted on the earth and the big trees were kings, an empty stream, a great silence, an impenetrable forest. The Heart of Darkness is a novel that, under its content, hides one of the darkest and more brutal chapters of human history, the European colonization of Africa. Marlowe's story in The Heart of Darkness takes place in the Belgian Congo, the most notorious European colony in Africa for its greed and brutalization of native people. Heart of Darkness does a great job in revealing the complete hypocrisy of the entire colonial effort. In Europe, colonization of Africa was justified to be beneficial not only to the European countries, but also will serve to civilize and educate the African natives. The novel does a great job in showing how the European people used the ideals of colonization as a cover to carry out their vicious activities to obtain wealth. Instead of focusing on the evils of colonialism, Heart of Darkness pays more attention to the effects and damage the colonization had on the personality of the Europeans.